my old teammate stated that he feels like, and this is, you know what, this is a great question for you, Pat P, because
Yes, sir.
you've been around both guys. Ryan Clark, former Pittsburgh Steeler, you know, we had him on the show, my former teammate, LSU alumni as well. He stated that George Pickens is more talented than Justin Jefferson. He said Justin Jefferson is more of a savant at the wide receiver position. But he said in regards to talent, George Pickens is more talented than Justin Jefferson. You've been around both wide receivers. You played with Justin the last 2 years. Heck, you knew Justin when you was at LSU when he was like 7 or 8 years old. No, you shouldn't feel old, Pat B, by the way, but you know, that's what it is. But what are your take on, you know, what are your thoughts about that in regards to what Ryan said about George Pickens being more talented than Justin Jefferson?
You know, I was thinking about that, you know, because I feel like I knew I would probably get asked that question, you know, at some point, because obviously I played with Justin. But I don't know when you go by and say talent. I mean, both of those guys are like super, super talented in their own way. Like Justin is super talented, in my opinion, in route running and setting up his routes. You know, GP is talented in freaking catching balls in all different acrobatic ways, you know, no matter where he is on the field, no matter how guys are covering him. But, you know, like I said, like, I don't know when you say has more talent than another player. That's kind of hard to always judge, in my opinion.
They're two different wide receivers.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They're definitely two different wide receivers, and it's hard to judge to say who has the more talent, because both of those guys, we've seen Justin make spectacular catches, but we see George make them on a more regular basis.
So
you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And it's hard because they're great. Well, Justin is already great.
Right.
We believe that's the area George Pickens is going.
Right.
Based on his skill set and his talent. So they're both, Justin is great in his own right in a different way. You know how sometimes when you see a receiver come up, or you see a position, another player in another position come up, and you always have a guy you can always pinpoint and say, he reminds me of this guy. You know, like, oh, this running back reminds me of this old running back. But when you think about Justin Jefferson, you gotta kind of combine multiple guys into who he is, because he does things so differently. He has an unorthodox style of running routes, and we say the same. You say the same thing about George Pickens. So it's kind of hard to say Justin Jefferson reminds me of this. No, you gotta put a combination of Davante Adams in there. You might say Keenan Allen. You might say Stevie Johnson. You might say Brandon Lloyd, the way he catches the football. And you gotta kind of do the same thing with George Pickens, because George Pickens doesn't just remind you of one wide receiver.
Yeah, you got a combination of a bunch of those guys. But it's almost like, think about this, like Justin is really, really good at like guys playing off of him. Like if you playing off of him, you gonna have a long day. You know, not saying that you can't be successful, but it's gonna be some time, especially if you don't get no hands on him. Well, if you get no hands on him, you better be ready to maintain your leverage. And he does a very good job of trying to manipulate the DB of leverage. And George is the total opposite. Like George is the type of guy, he likes that bully ball. He wants the DB to be in his face. He wants the contact. He wants the defensive back to be in close proximity, because he feels like he's unguardable in a sense. To no matter where the quarterback throws the ball, 9 times out of 10, you're not, especially if you're pressing me, you're not going to be able to locate the ball. I have the best chances of coming down with it.
I remember I told you, I said the way he manipulates his body and his body control reminds me a lot of Chad Johnson.
Yeah.
Like the way he just, you know, Chad used to have these crazy catches and the toe tap catches, and he just Michael Jackson leaning with it. You know, George Pickens kind of has a little bit of that, but you talked about the physical nature in which he displays as well. He wants that activity. And a lot of receivers don't want that. So, man, the sky's the limit, man. And one thing we know about the Pittsburgh Steelers, they draft wide receivers well. So
they sure do. They always find them one.
They gonna find them. They're gonna find them one after one after one after one. So it's no surprise to see George Pickens is doing what he's doing, because if he was healthy, he would have been a first rounder. He probably wouldn't be with Pittsburgh right now. But it seems like that's how it always happened with Pittsburgh. These guys just fall into the Steelers' lap.